Let's dig into resolutions. It's the first of the year. Here we are in 2021. I'm guessing everybody has happily said goodbye to 2020, although 2021 is starting out a lot like 2020 ended. Maybe a little bit more political drama going on right now. For anybody that's in or around DC, sounds like it's a real mess in DC today. So I hope everything is going well over there and that people are safe. I didn't see anybody checking in from in or around DC, but from my understanding, it's a bit of a mess over there. But coming to the rest of the world, we're going to talk a little bit about resolutions. And I don't even know that resolutions is an exactly fair topic for what I'm going to talk about today. Maybe some of these things are going to be resolutions. I mean, I certainly think that they're mindful to consider, but the reason we bring up resolutions is it's the beginning of the year. It's the time when people like to put up on the board, these are the things that I want to accomplish, whether that's going to the gym, eating better, losing weight, stopping smoking, whatever the case may be. It's really very easy at the very beginning of the year. We're all excited. And then all of a sudden something happens and we get into third, fourth, and fifth day of the year. And probably to some degree, life kicks in. You know, that first couple of days of the year, everybody's off work, nobody's bothering you. It's really easy to focus on what your resolutions are. And I found some funny things I just wanted to put up here, but I can't believe it's been a year since I didn't become a better person. That's a common fail thought right there. And then you can't go by without Maury Povich. But you said that you would stop eating junk food for your New Year's resolution. The lie detector determined that was a lie. So obviously we're having a little bit of fun right there. But the reality is many of us make resolutions. There are things we want to do and they quickly peter out because life gets in the way. And so I hope my goal today is to encourage you maybe in a couple of different areas to take a look at a serious look at putting some things up on the board to accomplish this year. And hopefully we can talk about these in a way to where they seem very achievable. Okay. It all starts out with goals. I mean, resolutions are goals. They are things I want to get done. And this is a quote that I've actually given before in a webinar, but John Maxwell made this quote, and I really, really like it. Success is the progressive realization of a predetermined goal. Very, very rarely are you just going to stumble upon success. You aren't going to go into the new year and suggest, you know what, I think I sort of want to do this thing, but you know, you're not really committed to it. You're probably not going to pull that off. To be successful, to pull off whatever it is you want to pull off, and that concept can apply to anything, whether you're trying to personally do it in your life, whether you're trying to do it within your evidence room. If you are not determined and put that goal down on paper and simply say, I'm not going to fail at this, odds are you will not get it done. All right. You've got to be able to prioritize. So it's easy to come up with the list. All right, now you're hearing this and it's like, all right, I can come up with 3 or 4 things that I want to do. I would highly suggest you've got a major, a middle, and a lower priority. You've got to rank these things. And I would highly suggest not getting too many going at once. I mean, if you've got 20 things on your list of to-dos for the year, odds are you're not going to get them done, especially if they have any size to the amount that you're dealing with. And so even though I'm going to show you off what I think are 10 really good things to focus on for the year, if you walk away from this and you've got 1 or 2 that are going to become your high priorities, that's a good place to go. Knock out one. In fact, some might even argue, pick one thing to do and get it done, and then go on to the next one. Because it's way more motivating when you knock out one than to have 10 of them that you're just ultimately doomed to failure. All right. And then lastly, this is just, I don't know that I've made up this quote, but it's something that I say frequently around our place. Just do something. I would rather see a really small effort being made, but you're successful in getting it done, than to be overwhelmed and ultimately do nothing. Something is better than nothing. Now, I'm not suggesting you just sort of laissez-faire, go out there and you're not really committed to it. Pick something and do it. All right. If you're getting the same results year after year, draw a line in the sand, tell yourself no more, and begin to move in a different direction. Just pick a place to start and start. And I know that sounds really easy to do, but I'm just telling you, if there's something that is on your mind, and again, we're going to dig into some things here in just a moment that's probably going to make you think. If you're having a really hard time getting the ball rolling on some of these things, just pick a place and start. As a matter of fact, better than not starting is starting something and it doesn't go really well, but just getting it started. So I cannot emphasize that enough. Just get moving on something, because that's at least something to build on. Okay. Now, a little bit of tracker, okay? Every year we as a group step back and we look at our successes for the year. That's really a lot of fun to do by writing down your goals. And maybe as the year goes along, maybe just take a Post-it note and stick it up above your desk. And when something good happens and it's an achievement, write it down, because at the end of the year, it's really fun to look back at the things we've accomplished. So as a company, when we have our annual meetings, one of the things we focus on are what are the things we did accomplish this year. We don't just launch into new objectives. We certainly spend time on new objectives, but we want to look back at what has been accomplished, because that's a foundation for, hey, look, we had some goals back there, and look, we accomplished it. Sometimes we don't make the goal that we're trying to achieve, and we want to learn from that and understand, but we like to review them. So some of the other areas we get into, because we're a technology company, my guess is, for those of the people that are on the phone here today listening to this, some of you are clients of ours. My guess is your expectation level is that we don't just sort of, dilly-dally around with disaster recovery planning. My thought would be you're expecting us to be knee deep in how do we protect and back up your data and make sure in the event of something going wrong that we're ready to restore it. How do we handle all of the things that we do? One of our goals this past year at Tracker Products, now I don't know if you guys know it or not, we're not an extremely large company, but we have 25 people now. And I'm really proud of that. We got 25 really awesome people. But one of the people we hired this past year was a compliance person. We now have somebody on staff that their full-time job is to not only make us more compliant with some of the standards that are out there, but we write lots of internal policies on things that we're going to be doing. Part of that is a disaster recovery plan. So we just brought on a really large project that I'm not ready to announce quite yet. In fact, it's the biggest project we ever brought on, but they certainly hit us hard on what does your disaster recovery planning look like. So again, we can't go into the year and be like, I think we want to do disaster recovery planning. We have to have these things as goals and objectives, and we have to attack them sort of like a rabid dog. I mean, that is what you're expecting to see. Now, you know what? Somebody just said on here, and I apologize. I'm sitting here rolling right along. That's totally embarrassing. I was not sharing my screen, was I? You know what, guys? I'm sorry. That is completely embarrassing. I was missing the question windows. People were throwing that up. So, all right, let me think. Let me back up a little bit. I was mainly reading from some of the things that were on the screen. So, you know what? I'm not going to go back through all those. We're just going to pick up where we were at. I'm sorry about that. I should have been more aware of this. But thank you for all of those that were yelling at me. I only got through, what, 8 minutes? So all this disaster recovery planning, and I didn't plan on showing my screen off. Okay, let's pick up and move on from there. So disaster recovery planning, compliance, and testing all of these things. Every year we have to test and make sure that all of these things that we have in play are actually being done and tested, and that they would work in the event of failure. All right, so let's do this. Let's get into the world of evidence management, and let me throw out 10 top things. And I don't know that these are in any particular order. They're just things I want you to be thinking about. Some of these you may pick and say, hey, I'm going to run with those things, but certainly, hopefully, they're going to induce some thought process. Number one, check your temperature alarms. As a matter of fact, I saw something on USA Today where there was a hospital that was storing a bunch of the COVID vaccine stuff, and one of the the freezer broke. And so if you think about that, many of you are storing freezers and things on your end that if the freezer goes out, you know how that happens at home sometimes, and all of a sudden all your meat falls. Well, it's a much bigger ordeal when it's a sexual assault kit that goes out. And so, anyways, keeping your temperature alarms, making sure that those things are working is good. Somebody is saying they still can't see my screen. I am hoping that I'm displaying that out. Max, are you on here? Let's get this thing resolved. Max, are you here?
I'm here. Yeah, I do not see it. So I know that maybe they updated their platform. It says waiting to view evidence
Man, that
management
is,
webinar
yeah, that's a
screen.
real
Yeah.
I do see that. You know what? I wonder if this is that. So GoToMeeting, this is our first webinar of the year, and GoToMeeting has been having some problems. And I thought the problem was resolved, and I did not know it. It definitely is showing that I'm sharing my screen, but it is not. So let's do this, guys. Instead of bailing on this, we're just going to go to plan B. And what I'll do is, because all I'm doing is reading this top 10 list. I know you can't see my screen, but we can still talk about them, because I mean, there's nothing really particularly to see on my screen except the 10 things that I'm going through. So what I will do is, you know what? Let me try this. We're going to take a quick left turn here. Let me put inside, yes. So here's what I'm going to do. For those of you, let me try to generate a PDF file real quick. Sorry, guys. This is disaster recovery planning at its finest. I'm going to put the PowerPoint in the there's inside the GoToWebinar window. There is a handouts area. So if you give me 1 second, I'm going to drop this PowerPoint into that. And hold on, let me find it. Resolutions, okay. And of course, this is going to be a problem too. Yep, that's not working either. So here's what I'll do. Let's forget that altogether. I'm still going to run through my 10 items, because you can just hear these audibly. But at the end of this, I'll take a PDF and I'll put it on the, we'll send out an email to everybody that was on here. We've got all your emails from logging in. I'll send an email to everybody with a PDF, and I'll send the PowerPoint that will show you the things that we covered here today. So, and then we'll get this webinar thing fixed. I don't know why the screen's not working, but let's keep rolling on. It looks like most people are hanging out, so I appreciate you staying with us. So number 10, check your temperature alarms. Make sure you have a temperature alarm in place, because if you do not and the freezer goes out, you're going to spoil whatever was being put in that freezer. So I know they have some really cool alarms now where these things can tie into Wi-Fi's and they'll send you emails with notifications. Make sure your freezers and refrigerators have a notifier on them some way that you've lost power. Okay, number 9 on my list, preparing for water damage. Do you have a water pipe in your evidence room? Are you in an area that's prone to flooding? You know, the question becomes, what happens if there is a flood? All right. And this is far more common than what people generally hear about. But I would probably focus, number 1, on the water pipes and the things like that in your evidence room. That's probably going to be a little more common than, you know, some sort of a major flooding in the area. But you should certainly give thought to both of those scenarios, that what happens to my evidence if a pipe burst or there's flooding damage or whatever degree. Okay. Number 8 on my list, and again, remember, these are not in any particular order, but number 8, check your fire suppression system. Look at your fire extinguishers. Look at any other systems that might be in place to make sure those things are functional. I mean, it's pretty simple to have a fire extinguisher in the room, but and those things are built to last. I mean, they don't last just, you know, a couple of weeks, but you got to look at those. They have to be maintained. They do have expiration dates on them. Take a look at those things and make sure that that's up to code. Number 7 on my list, look at your Narcan if you have Narcan. Those things do expire after a period of time. Don't be in a situation where you need Narcan and the Narcan is expired or you can't find it. That is just a big problem no-no if that ever does occur. So take a look at that. Make sure you have Narcan if you don't have that. I mean, we're in a world where that stuff is it's just absolutely necessary. I don't have a lot of details on what it takes to get Narcan, but you should have some of that in your evidence room around the drugs. That is just a gots to have. Get that. I don't know if James is on here. I know James is my resident expert on Narcan, but if anybody has any questions on Narcan, you can toss them in here. And I'm guessing James is somewhere in the background around here, and he can provide more information about Narcan. But definitely look at that. Number 6 on my list, look at rodents and infestation problems. I mean, it's not hard to know if you have a rodent problem in your evidence room. You're going to see poop around, mouse poop. And those mice, I know this from having a barn with cardboard boxes in it. They like to get in boxes. They're really, really good at getting in any place and finding a spot to hide and just tearing things up and causing problems. Look at those things. Make sure you've got things in place to cut down on that. And you may laugh at that and think, I've never even heard about that. I know that there are people out there that are dealing with serious rodent problems, and that's not only a problem for the evidence, that's a problem for you. I mean, that's a health hazard to have infestation problems in your evidence room. Okay. Now we're getting down to some of the good ones, I would say. Number 5, look at your access control and your keys. Is it time to replace those things? How many people have access to the evidence room? How do you control access to the evidence room? Now's a really good time to look over, how do people get in? Who has access to it? How are we recording this stuff? Are there cameras in play? How do people get into the evidence room? And that might be a good leeway into getting some electronic systems in place for access to the room, whether that's key card where you're documenting entry by people. Certainly cameras, video cameras should be an essential part of an evidence room, not only for your protection, but for everybody's protection. Okay. Number 4 on my list is video cameras. But not just video cameras and having them, but have you ever looked to see if you can review any of the video on it? It's amazing how many people have video cameras in place and they've never looked at the resulting video. What if it's not working? What if there's a problem in the system? That's like, in my world, that's like having backups, but never testing the restoration of a backup. It's great to have backups, but if they don't work when you need to restore them, that becomes a serious problem. So make sure you look at your video camera systems, check out the backup stuff, and make sure that that stuff is functional the way you expect it to be functional. All right. Number 3 on the list, gots to have this one, doing inventories. Many of you on here are not doing fairly frequent inventories of your evidence room. And I know they're hard to do, and maybe you don't have a good system in place. So here's how I'll try to encourage you in this regard. Just pick a couple of locations and do it. All right. If you've got to print them out on paper, if it's on a notepad, whatever you've got to do to begin the inventory process. Okay. I look at inventories much like I dealt with school in my life. Every time I had a homework assignment, for me, it was this overwhelming large 10-pound pie that I had to take down, or I picked something, worse than pie, like a 10-pound thing of broccoli. Like, nobody wants to take that thing down. And for many of you, doing inventories is a lot like that. It's a monster process. It's difficult. It's painful. It causes you to lose sleep at night. So instead of trying to say, hey, my New Year's resolution is I'm going to inventory the entire room in one afternoon, which is, largely not possible for most of you, just pick a location and do one. And then at the end of it, take that piece of paper with the results or whatever and hang it up on the wall. Go out and buy some, big gold stars if you want, and put it up on the wall and show that there's some success being proven. And then, next week, do another one. If for whatever reason you're in a situation you can't do it all, within a year or whatever other period of time you need, doing something is better than nothing. And you've got to be doing inventories of your evidence room. Now, if you're in a situation where it simply cannot be done, you don't possess the technology to get it done, then you've got to invest or look into a system that's going to help you make that thing feasible. Because not doing inventories is just a big no-no. All right. Number 2 on my list, and now we're getting down to what I would say are certainly the biggest ones, starting with the inventory. And number 2 on my list is looking at your technology and looking for backup or failure points. It still happens today. That hard drive with all my video data on it is busted and we lost it all. Or even worse, my computer software system that has all the system, the data, the evidence in it, it broke and now we've lost all of our evidence. That stuff still routinely happens. All right. Now, many of you may suggest, you know what? That's not something I have to worry about. I got an IT department that worries about it. Hey, guess whose problem that is? That becomes your problem when something breaks down. If you have an IT department that handles that stuff, I would go ask them, show me where these backups are at. Tell me that these things are being done. I don't want to lose my digital evidence. I don't want to lose my physical evidence, all that information. How can you ensure that it's being taken care of? Because especially in the Cincinnati area in the last year, a large regional vendor that was doing work for 20 local police departments, they just simply lost their RMS data. Okay. I'm not suggesting they just lost some of their evidence, some of their digital, they lost some Excel files. They lost their entire RMS system, 20 departments, nothing left. I mean, I cannot even imagine having to make a phone call to tell people that just everything has been lost, which is why we go overboard on all of our stuff. But you're ultimately responsible if something goes wrong. It may be somebody else's fault, but you bear the burden when that technology breaks. And so you may have to ask some questions. How is that digital evidence being backed up? Or what happens if that one hard drive goes bad? Please don't take the stance of that's not my problem, that's somebody else's problem, because ultimately it does become your problem, even if you can point the finger at somebody else. All right. And then the very last thing on my list is doing an audit. I think one of the most critical components is not only having a goal and having a list of, in our world, those become compliance things. I mean, many of you are operating under compliance, whether it's CGIS for your department, or CALIA or one of the other major accreditation firms that are out there. Many of you are operating under a compliance infrastructure, but what I've ultimately learned over time, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. The evidence portion of it is really not that thorough. It's not like Sean Henderson from EMI comes in and does an audit, where he spends days looking at just evidence stuff. They're usually pretty paltry in what they're looking for. And so I would recommend, as part of the evidence room, you have policies and procedures written out, things that determine and dictate how you go about doing what you do. And many of you might suggest, you know what, I don't want to bring in that level of scrutiny. I don't want people coming in and looking at what I do. I'm afraid I might fail. And we're in the same boat as a company. It becomes a lot harder when you bring CGIS in, or, we're working on a SOC 2 certification right now. And so when you invite auditors in from the outside or people to scrutinize your operation, you may think, man, that's a real pain in the butt, because this may not go very well. But the ultimate purpose of those, it forces you to change how you do what you do and become better. You simply don't have the option of sitting there and doing nothing. So you may be thinking, I don't want to bring in scrutiny. I would encourage you, you do. You want somebody to look at what you do and say, hey, these are areas where you really could use some progress. And that's not a bad thing. It feels like a bad thing when somebody tells you something bad, but you want that scrutiny. You want the chief coming in and looking at your operation, or you want to go to him at the end of the year with a report that says, hey, here's an evaluation of how we're doing. That is something you should want to seek out. So if you're sitting here thinking, Ben, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say, I don't want that. I would encourage you to really look at that and think about bringing somebody in to look at things to give you a different perspective on how you're operating. And so to that degree, something that we offer for free at Tracker, it's part of the Evidence Management Institute, is we offer a free online audit. I'm not suggesting this is like bringing CALIA in or bringing Sean in to do a full-blown audit, but we do have a free mini audit that you simply log in online. So inside the chat window. Now, so you guys, many of you have been in the question window. If you go to the chat window, I'm going to put in the link, and Max, if you can confirm that, did you, Max, or did the link just get posted to everybody?
It did, however, I'm not certain whether attendees can see the chat window or not. I can, since I'm
Okay.
one of the organizers, but
Well, I'll tell you what, let me go one other route on this one. I'm going to post this. All right. So in the question window, I just responded to somebody's question. I think somebody was just saying hello, but I think I just responded to everybody. So okay, great. So a couple of people are seeing it. So Max, we're confirmed. Hey, we've pulled off one thing here today. So we're gonna,
fantastic.
hey
Good.
Max, go get my post-it note and get me a gold sticker and let's put it on the wall. The link did go out to people. Everything else failed, but the link did go out.
Awesome.
Okay, so everybody, that is our free evidence health check. It's going to take you just a little bit of time. You're going to go to that link. You're going to fill in some basic information about yourself. And you'll notice on that page over on the right, if you're wondering, what does this thing look like? I don't want to spend all this time digging into it. There's a link on the right where you can look at a report that was produced. And so, again, the benefit of this is it really does give you a starting point. It helps you answer some of those difficult questions of, where are areas that I need to focus on? I would use that report to go back to your chief or your sheriff or whoever the boss is. That report becomes an invaluable part of making some steps forward. Because I also understand while I'm making all these suggestions about all these things you can do, many of you have to go back to the boss and either get approval or get funds or get whatever else. It is 1,000 times better, if not 1,000,000 times better, to walk in the door with a produced report that gives you some areas to focus on from a third party agency than to walk in and just say, hey, this is all a total mess. I need money. The first part, you have a better shot at getting some results. That second one, unless you're very persuasive, you may find it difficult to just go in and demand money and get a response on that. Okay, so guys, I apologize for all of the video display problems. I will figure out what is going on with that. The good news is today was not as intense on showing stuff on the screen. There were some things you missed earlier, but we will post the PDF in the Facebook community group, and we'll email it out to everybody. Max, can you make sure that I get you a PDF copy of this so you can email it to everybody that was here today?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, everyone, I don't see any questions coming in. Certainly, you can post questions if you have them, but if not, I hope this was valuable here today and it gives you a couple of things to think about. And as always, if there's anything we can help you out with, please don't hesitate to let us know. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.